history and relationship to this land, and to reaffirm my commitment to treat those relationships with respect they always deserved. So yes, I'm very excited. I am pleased to let you all know, as Premier is quite tall, so hard to miss. So our BC's Premier David visiting here. We had wonderful morning with Mayor walking on the trails, getting to know our community more, and also have walked downtown, meeting some business owners, and we did the reconciliation, the knowledge sharing experience. And then we were at the cafe meeting with a lot of nonprofit organizations. So it's been a great day. Well, very exciting to be here among you. So Premier David Eby, and also colleague Minister Ann Kang. She's Minister of Municipal Affairs and Immigration. She used to be the Minister for Advanced Education as well, and had many other portfolios. Portfolio Parliamentary Secretary for Senior Services and Long-Term Care, which I hold now. So it's been an honor to work with both of them, and they've been very supportive throughout my journey for our community. The work we need to do, I feel fully supported. So they're here to hear directly from you, the people I talk about every single day. So I will pass. We've been taking action on many issues, like, as you know, people are facing here. Whether it's cost of living, housing, healthcare, public safety. And just yesterday, we released a strategy for rural BC, which talks about unique challenges for smaller communities. Talk about rural community, of course. We have Lumbee, we have Cherryville, Lavington, Coldstream, and Vernon. Also, a lot of people, rural communities itself can be different. Mackenzie to Terrace, the towns I used to live. We made great announcements yesterday. One was a healthcare transfer for healthcare, like transportation, $61 million, if I remember that from yesterday. At UBCM, we had wonderful 5 days meeting with, and we're taking action to make sure that everybody's voices are heard. As many of you know, my decision to step into this unknown territory political arena from nursing, only one reason, and one reason was people, and from caring, nurturing lens, and to have voices from all over. So I'm glad that I have the opportunity, but today we have Premier who will get to hear from. I'll pass the microphone to Premier, or he has his own, and then to Minister Kang, they'll share a few words with you. So once again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I look forward to this discussion.
Thanks, Harwinder. It's so great to be here. You have an amazing local MLA here. Harwinder works so hard for the community every day. And I'm so glad to see all of you here. There's so many of you. We broke the room. The doors appear to be in there. No obvious safety risk, but enough space for everybody to be able to come in. I'm so glad. It's a bit of a trek up here. It's my first time up at Silver Star. I love to ski, but I've never skied here, and I love to come in the winter. And we had a great day. Vernon, there are so many questions. A lot of you filled in questions on the way in. I'm not going to spend a long time talking at the beginning because I'm going to answer your questions instead. So thank you for those of you who put questions in. We'll get through as many as we can. I think almost every person. So I'll try to keep my answers brief. I'm a lawyer and a politician, so that doesn't come naturally at all, right? I like to talk, but I'll try to keep them brief so we can get through as many as I can, and with you and with my colleague Ann and Harwinder.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ann Kang. I'm the MLA for Burnaby Deer Lake, all the way in Burnaby, but Vernon is always dear and near to my heart as well. Minister for Municipal Affairs and Immigration. And so in the past week, from Sunday to Friday, I have met with over 68 local governments directly to listen to their needs. Here of rural and remote and indigenous communities is that they need more support in their infrastructures. And so I also understand the needs of Vernon, as I have been here quite a few times. It's so important for me to be on the ground to hear from you so that we understand what your needs are and make the correct strategic direction in our government direction. So very happy and humbled to be here and hearing from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier, and thank you, Minister. And a little bit about Premier, he is also married to a family doctor and who was registered nurse once, and he's got 2 children. So I'm like, how often did BC had a Premier who gets briefed on healthcare issues every single evening, probably?
And just to be clear, that is not our strategy to get everyone a family doctor. That's just...
So no, just a little bit about like, so thank you. And Minister Kang, under her portfolio as well, she helped us a lot. I won't share all the other announcements or grants we received, but one of the most important was student housing. Vernon's first student that you're seeing being built, 100 units, which will free up housing in town. Not only that, she was good at government as well, and they gave us 60 units in Seminarm, almost 326 in. We already cut the ribbon last year. And then later I went back with request. I said, you've been very generous. We're getting childcare spaces as well. Can you do us another favor and advocate for 44 childcare spaces on site? So yeah, I think that's how it happens when we work together and when we have the colleagues and the supportive government who works. So it's all of your voices as well. So we will go into questions and answer. And if you have, you can still submit. As I said, there are lots of questions. I'm very encouraged to see you all being very engaged. Those asking questions can come sit next to the Premier, and I'll call you by your name. And the first question will be from Cindy Masters.
No pressure, Cindy. No pressure. Come on up. You got to be brave to be first. Thank you, Cindy.
When I did my question, there weren't all these people here, so I take back my question. No, the first thing I want to say is thank you. You came to visit our seniors at Creekside Village. Remember the visit?
Caucus Reef.
And they still talk about that visit. So I want to thank you for that before I do the question, because they really did feel like you listened to them. I also felt like you listened to me, and you were able to get our project finished. We were able to get the permits to help us with our project. So thank you for doing that for the seniors at Creekside Village. But my question is, we are needing more housing for the GAP population, the senior young families that are working. And I know that the current fund does help those people, but for small nonprofits like ours, we don't have the land. So we need, I think the mic just okay, so we need more land. We need more help from the province with the land so that we can have more projects to help the GAP population. So those are the people that I'm really thinking that we need to have more support on. And the operating agreement with BC Housing is they don't give us marketing dollars to help market to our tenants, the tenants we're looking for. So when we say the word affordable housing, who applies are people who are receiving subsidy, and we need to help target the people that we're looking for that need the housing.
Yeah, really interesting question. I wasn't aware of that issue around targets or tenant groups with advertising. I'll take that back. But broadly, I mean, I'm certainly aware of the housing issue. I imagine most of you are here in the room, and put your hand up if you've for housing, trying to find a place to buy or a place to rent. So, I mean, you have that immediate experience of looking on. Is Craigslist the place to go to in Vernon for looking for rentals? Kijiji? Net, little plug for Castanet. So you have the experience of going on Castanet and looking at the rents and realizing that in terms of what you earn and what's available for rent, the options are very limited. And the same goes for trying to get into the market, just trying to, for young families, who want to get into the market and eventually get to that dream of a single family home. So it's a profoundly serious issue across Canada. And our government's really taking a number of steps to address it. So for some groups, so people who are living on social assistance, people who are living on disability, people are we have a multi-billion-dollar social housing initiative that's been underway building housing. Some of the challenges we've had are getting through provincial and municipal processes in order to actually get that much slower than we wanted in some sites. Other places have been quite fast. Vernon's a great partner for these kinds of things. We have, I think we've got 2 supportive housing sites done, and there's 1 underway. I see them, Mayor Vic out there. And that's, you know, I think that's what people think about when they think about government's role about housing is kind of people who are really struggling, people at risk of homelessness. But we're having to move into the area of people, you know, they have a reasonable income. They should be able to afford a place to buy. They're being forced into the rental market. They should be able to afford a decent place to rent. They can't find it. And so I was talking with somebody today about family doctor medical student residents and the need to provide housing for those medical students that, you know, they should be able to find a place to rent on the market. And so what we're having to do, and this will be a slightly, there are a number of housing questions today, is we're identifying publicly owned land. That's city-owned land, health authority-owned land, school board-owned land, Indigenous government land, Crown land that's serviced that we can use for housing. And one of the big drivers, there are a number of drivers of costs of housing, but land is one of the big costs, the availability of land. And so if under a program we're calling BC Builds, we'll be using 99-year leases on this land to be able to build more affordable, attainable rental housing and housing for purchase. This is something that governments around the world, Korea, the government of Seoul does this. I was in Singapore, a little tiny island country that was a huge number of sort of shanty town kind of slum housing that now has 80% home ownership of Singaporean residents on a tiny landlocked island. And they've had huge success with this. There's no reason why we can't do that here. And in fact, governments used to do it. Governments used to build co-op housing. Governments used time housing. This is not a new thing. It's a proven model. It's just government stopped doing it. And so we have a lot of work happening around identifying that land. And we'll be looking to nonprofits and partners to be able to build it and operate it, if it's rental housing, to be able to deliver that actual housing. And that's more middle income housing. That's including seniors that are looking to downsize. That's working families that be able to find a place. And we'll also be taking some of the pressure off the low end as well by providing this middle income housing. So we're going to keep doing the social housing, but we're going to start using more public land to be able to deliver that.
One last question. You really need to do some work with the RTB as well, though, because when you get people into housing, it's really hard. So if you're a private landlord, it's hard when you get bad tenants, and it's hard to other things that I think the government needs to get involved in RTB.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just announced a program where we've released a guide for people who are interested in potentially becoming a landlord. Because this is something we hear. People have anxiety. What if I get a bad tenant? How do I get rid of deal with that? And also the cost of building a suite in your place, going through the permits is quite intimidating. So the guide walks people through all the steps that you need to take to become a landlord, working with your local government to get the permits and on landlords, the obligations on tenants and the process around that. And the program is set up so that in phase 2, which we'll be announcing in a couple months, we'll be providing grants to people who are interested in becoming landlords suites in their homes in return for a commitment to rent them at below market rates for 5 years. And the goal is to bring on more rental housing faster in communities and secondary suites, which we're able to private landlords. There's huge interest in the program. There are lots of people interested in doing it. But you're absolutely right. When you're a landlord, you're sharing your home with somebody else. And people need to have that security. So one of the big problems is we had a huge backlog at the residential tenancy branch. You got to be able to evict them, but you have to get the hearing. So we've doubled the staff of the residential tenancy branch. We've simplified some processes for straightforward hearings around eviction and non-payment of rent to deal with that confidence that if someone stops paying their rent or starts causing some kind of a problem related to crime or anything else, that they're going to be able to have that person removed. It is a challenge, though, for sure. and really grateful to those people opening their homes in that way, and hoping to get more people to do that.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and thanks, Premier. And also under the doubling.
Thanks, Cindy. Way to go.
Yay!
Way to go. Okay, I will tighten it up, Harwinder. That we're gonna have 5 questions at this
All
phase.
right, and under that doubling the staff, it was $500 million was announced in Premier's first 100 days of action on housing and other fronts. So money did go to address, and it's still working to make sure things are happening smoothly there. So Cody Henderson's next question. Cody, do we welcome you with big?
Which one do you have? I actually wrote 2 questions down, so not sure if you want me to do this one or the other one.
Have it in your hands. Here we go.
Okay, well, let's actually start with. Yeah. Okay. So let's. The other one that I wrote down, so it's to do with the current addictions crisis that we're facing in the province here. It's no secret to everybody that we see it everywhere downtown. It's even moving outside of town now and in all of our neighborhoods. So we have throughout the province, what I've seen is a large emphasis on harm reduction, but I'm not seeing much of an emphasis on access to treatment. Wait times, they're long. Ready for treatment, the window in which they're ready to accept help and to get better is small, and it shrinks sometimes by the day or by the hour, where somebody's ready today might not be ready tomorrow. So what are we doing to increase the availability of treatment beds to the people in our communities?
Yeah, great question. So the issue of the toxic drug crisis and what we're seeing in our streets, people, I'm trying to remember where you are in Vernon. I think there's about 30 people who have died of overdose this year in Vernon alone. Provincially, we're about 12,000 people since the public health emergency was declared. And that's just the people who have passed away. It doesn't include the people who sustain serious brain injuries because they're not breathing for a long period of time and are in long-term care or are in community quite brain injured. And it's a profoundly serious and challenging issue. And one of the big goals that we have around harm reduction, around get doctors and nurses between people struggling with addiction and predatory drug dealers, is to keep people alive so that they have a chance to get into treatment. And in our most recent budget, we dedicated $1 billion treatment beds across the province. Now we've increased a number of youth treatment beds here already in Vernon for people 12 to 24 and an outpatient treatment for youth, because we know if we can get people when they're young, we can hopefully misery with addiction. So it's been a particular focus in this community. We're working with the health authority. We know that mental health is so closely linked to addiction as well. The psychiatric building at the hospital is significant. Not safe, it's not adequate for the services that are required in the community, and the health authority is working on a proposal with government related to that in partnership with local government. It's vital that that gets opened. And this challenge that we face around opening addiction beds is the staff to be able to run them. The social workers, the addictions doctors, the psychiatric nurses, and so on. And so working within government on a couple fronts. We have a 10-year health human resources strategy around opening spaces at post-secondary schools for training for this, around recognizing the credentials of people with experience from international countries that can do this kind of work, people in as quickly as possible. But we're also looking at, is there a way where we can leverage the addiction doctor more, the psychiatric nurse more, and have what we have in long-term care, which is an LPN or which is not a full registered nurse, but they support the registered nurse in doing some of the work that the registered nurse can supervise. And so is there something like that for an addictions model that we can do a certificate program that someone could do at college and then work right away doing this kind of work under the supervision of a nurse with a specialty in addictions and so on, because we need the people to be able to deliver this service. Mental health and addiction is like every other healthcare sector that we have in the province. It's under huge partially because of aging population, partially because of population growth, and partly because of retiring doctors and nurses. So it's a big push. It's not lack of money. It's not lack of capital. It's about able to run this. Right now, the Canadian Mental Health Association has a call out for nonprofit organizations to partner with them to open more beds across the province with this funding that I'm talking about. And we're also opening beds, Fish Center. This is for people with intense mental health and addiction issues. They're healthcare beds, they're like hospital beds for people on the really far end that are struggling, and everything in between. So we got a real push. And I am as keen as everybody else to get these open as quickly as possible because it's so urgent with people dying on numbers that we're seeing. So thank you so much for asking about that.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer on that one. And nice guy, and I'll let somebody else come up and ask another question. And you guys can just respond to my other one later on.
Okay, right on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Premier. And next, Cassandra. Yes. Let's sit together. Thank you.
I didn't expect that. I had the moderator. Mine was about transportation. I'm the executive director of the association, and
I was going to guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Logoed out. Thank you very much for being here, first and foremost, and for so many people in the room. We struggle with transit from a small community, getting people here in resort, staffing for young families, youth and sport, and for destination guests. So it's something that I've been working on as a nonprofit, but trying to figure out a better way to partner with BC Transit and with the City of Vernon in getting transit options up here to the resorts and throughout the whole region.
Thanks for hosting us.
How best to do it.
Yeah, I gotcha. So thanks for hosting us, first of all. It's great. And as I said, I look forward to coming when it's snowing. We have a number of rural caucus members in our electeds, and Harwinder represents a number of rural communities, smaller communities, as part of her constituency. And she mentioned in her introductory remarks that we have a rural vision that we released, and the goal of that approach is to recognize that programs that are established for bigger urban centers are often a very poor fit for smaller communities. There were sort of three rural caucus outlined as we were doing that work together based on feedback from their communities. One was rural transportation, one was healthcare, and one was transportation for healthcare. So I'm certainly not surprised to hear you raise the issue of rural transportation. So following that process, transportation was really front and center. And the goal of our government to respond to the needs is to increase transportation options, because the gap that we're seeing is really between communities. Anytime that you're between a city or a town, two towns, or between and a city and people have to travel for healthcare, they have to travel for employment or whatever. That's where the transportation system is really falling down. The Ministry of Transportation is increasing resources to BC Transit to be able to these routes so that they can cover those areas in between these centers, including between employment centers and where the workers live in rural communities. And so I'm hopeful that movement on this. The best way to connect with BC Transit and the Ministry of Transportation and to coordinate this work is through the person immediately to your right, Harwinder. She is a super advocate and for the community and would be a great point person to connect that. But we'll follow up with Ministry of Transportation and BC Transit to talk to you about that service, to make sure that your workers are able to get to the site, but also people who want to have a good time and don't necessarily have access to a car.
And for more sustainability. Thank you so much. And come back to ski, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Cassandra. Just to add to that, bring ministers and premiers here so they get to see what I talk about. We had a plan to bring Minister Rob Fleming and Minister Lana Popham, who's Rob Fleming is a few Minister of Highway, Transportation and Infrastructure. Lana is from Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sports. We had calendar 2 days saved, and then fires happened and there was smoky, so that's not canceled, it's postponed, so it'll still be on my radar, so we'll do that as well. So let's chat. Thank you. Next is Lindsay Brennan. Lindsay, come on in. Big round of applause for Lindsay, please.
Oh, that's so I can. Mine's around childcare, actually. Small business owner up on the mountain. My husband works for the government. We have a 2-year-old. We are still on a wait list. So as much as there are 46 new spots in Vernon, it's just not enough. We're constantly calling around. We luckily have access to childcare, which is not cheap. So yeah, mainly childcare. Where is that? How many more are coming? Like, population is growing. So that's our biggest kind of contention around here. And you go to play groups and talk to other moms and that year mark to go back to work and they can't. So that's kind of what I was looking at.
Thanks. Yeah, great question. Got a couple young kids of my own. We have a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I said, oh my gosh, we're pregnant. The first call was not to anyone that we love and in our family. The first call was to the YMCA to get on the wait list. And so you know that vibe, and it's a huge concern for so many people. I'm going to pass it over as soon as I'm done to Ann Kang to talk about how immigration connects with this in terms of childcare workers. But in terms of government's commitment around childcare, we see, and you are such a good example, our childcare program as an economic program. It's a program that helps our province grow. It supports business and economic growth. A lot of people see childcare as a social program. It helps support families, it helps support kids. But what we've seen is that our recovery from COVID, our economic recovery, the fastest province in terms of economic recovery from COVID, and that was led by women's employment. And we believe that was a direct result of the childcare program to date. So we're big believers in it. We have funding to expand it, including for new spaces. Just like many of the things that we want to do, many of the things that business wants to do, we're challenged by qualified staff because we don't want to reduce standards around our kids. We had a really horrific about, go into detail, about a child named Baby Mac in British Columbia, an unlicensed childcare facility where desperate parents had to put their kids, they didn't have any other options. And we want to keep high standards to deliver the care. So I'm going to pass it over to Ann Kang to talk about how, in addition to our domestic training initiatives around providing supports and bursaries for people to do childcare, early childhood education, what other work we're doing.
Thank you so much, Premier, and thank you so much. I also have 2 children on my own, and I had to rely on childcare. I had 2 jobs, and so if it wasn't for the childcare that I had, I wouldn't have been able to give back to the community. So I'm going to answer this in 3 ways. One is in immigration. Our immigration that the province is able to control is the economic immigration, and so that's the BC Provincial Nominee Program. Since we have negotiated with the federal government on the number of BC PNP programs that we can have in British Columbia, this year, 2023, we have 8,000 BC from the federal government, and next year will be 9,000, and the year after will be 10,000. I reported this back to the Premier, and the Premier said, not good enough, we could do more, and so we went back and negotiated. The federal government has agreed next year to increase our provincial nominee program by 30%. So thank you so much to Premier and for the federal government for the support for that. So in terms of early childhood education program, because of BC PNP, we have increased our childhood educators in BC by 387%. And so that's a real increase. As well, I know that our ministry, a partner ministry in education and childcare, has also been working with our post-secondary education, where I was previously, to work on training our local students, professionals who want to be early childhood educators. And because we really want to focus on safe and affordable childcare here in British Columbia, it is so important. And another program that we're working on is directly with, so not my ministry, the Ministry of Education and Childcare, is working directly with municipal government, working directly with schools. It's not just about the childcare from 0 to 4. It is also before and after school care. So that's the second topic. And then the third one was briefly on what Harwinder touched upon, childcare also in post-secondary institution, and as well encouraging employers to also provide childcare as well. And so whenever possible, when post-secondary colleges, universities, when they build student housing, we always encourage them to look ahead. Can you also be building childcare now that a building has erected? And they would think about that. So that with Okanagan College and provide 32 spaces. 44, that's good, it went up. We're working on so many fronts to make sure that of young parents or students who are going to work, or they're working in public service or in schools, that there's affordable childcare. So we will continue working. I know we're doing a lot, but not enough, and up the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you. So I want to add to that, in Vernon, the 44 or 46, it's only college, but I'm happy to say that since our government came in power, we have built 2 healthcare facilities in Vernon, one brand new in Coldstream, along with the Coldstream City Hall with 86 or 84 spaces. We built another one in Lavington. So we're from one end to other, and then the existing ones were funded reduced rate. And we heard yesterday from local leaders when presented, there was a conversation that also we're reducing fees by $900 per child. And I too remember, again, working long hours. That after losing my first husband, if I wasn't for my mom, I wouldn't be able to contribute to healthcare system for 20 years. And it was hard, and I couldn't afford, and even for one child, $2,200 early in 2,000 days. To do that may not bring comfort, but you have the real champions. So 53% of us women sitting on the government who faced, and the previous minister, Minister Karina Chan, has done fabulous work laying the groundwork, who again faced through the same journey we go through. So there is commitment. More than 700 spaces are brought since recently. It's just the area that was not paid attention to, and candidates forum, one candidate said, it's not even doable, it's not feasible, it's not. So and here on the other side, I was debating how it helps the economy itself. So this year's forecast came that we have more than 75% of women with the investments we're making, but this is just the beginning at many fronts for us, not only having to fill the gaps, but also to strengthen the existing system. So thank you. We'll keep you in mind while we do the work. Thanks. I see. Next question, Julie. I'm trying to read your last name, and it's very tiny reading, sorry. Here, are there 2 Julies? Then we'll see what's the last name. Yeah, go ahead, Julie. It's you. I'm teasing you. Thank you.
Julie, are those handcuffs on your lapel? Fantastic.
Yes, I am the Prime Minister, President of the Vernon Jubilee Hospital Foundation Board. So it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. So I guess my question is the mental health. How committed is the government to getting this done? I know mental health has been on the back burner for quite a while. It's starting to creep forward. But how something like this done? You know, the foundation has raised over $6 million just for a CT scanner. And that's thanks to the Vernon people. Contributions. So I guess my question is, how committed are you? And I know Interior Health is working on some kind of a plan, a system. How fast can we get this done?
Good. Okay. Well, I feel like I'm sitting with someone who could get this done in a hurry. We're very committed, and I know that Interior Health is working on a concept plan about about certain logistical matters related to the building, a parking lot, stuff like that. And that's the level of the conceptual plan right now, is down to details like that. So really excited about it. As excited as you can get about a psychiatric building, right? I think it's urgently needed. I think it will make a difference in community. What I hear is that you can't get residents, medical residents who are studying to be psychiatrists to come because of the state of the building right now. You need that support. That's critical. We also need those folks to do training in this area. So I feel a huge level of urgency around it, and I can tell you do as well.
So there is an old saying, they will come.
Yes. Yeah, we know they're already here, the people who need the support, right? We know they're in the community. We know they need the support right now. We know they need that building, and we know the residents are ready to come as it's ready. So I agree with you. As soon as it's built, people will be there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right on. Thank you. And thank you for your work. That's amazing. $6 million.
Thank you, Julie. And I can attest as a nurse. Yeah. Let them. Yes. So that was my first from health minister as well, and then Premier Horgan, and then now I get to work with his ministry. So I try to take a peek. It is there on the books, and I think they're working on a business plan here, and I won't let them forget to have a strong advocate, but my government is committed to make that happen. So stay tuned. Thank you. And Chris Fuller, you are next.
Hi, thank you. Is this on? Thank you for coming, Anne and David. Thank you. And thank you for being here, Harwinder and everyone. I'm Chris Fuller. I'm the executive director for the Vernon Winter Carnival. You've been invited. I hope you ski and come to the carnival.
We have the best lapels up here. That's a snowflake.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
fantastic.
I wore it just
Perfect.
for you guys. Thank you. But I do have a question about housing. I know Cindy's question covered a lot, but just in as far as looking for young people in my life, and I think, how are they going to buy a house in 5 or 10 years when prices go up? I bought a house in 2015 and then rebought a house in 2021, and the price was almost double. And so I'm looking at that like forward. What's the strategy or thoughts?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, the situation in the province is a remarkable one. 250,000 people have joined our province as permanent residents in the last 2 years. That's a really significant population increase. And that doesn't include temporary residents, international students, temporary foreign workers, that could easily double that number. This is, it's incredibly positive news in terms of support around healthcare. We talked about childcare, building our province, supporting an aging population here. It's a big of ensuring we have the housing that we need to support the population in British Columbia. And so housing is such a wicked problem. There's so many things that feed into why house prices have. One of them is absolutely that we are short on the number of housing units that we simply need for the number of people who are here. So we have worked with municipalities around speeding up their approval to work within the legal framework that we give them. And we have new laws coming in the fall that help them speed up those processes. Some municipalities are reluctant to approve the housing that we need. And so we've set, and some municipalities would like to hit housing targets, but they don't have the capacity in terms of staff to be able to approve housing. So at UBCM, we announced $60 million to help support cities to get permits done faster, be able to work with zoning rules to get more housing built faster. And all that is to recognize that there are people who will be able to buy housing on the private market. But there are people, as I said earlier, who still aren't able to level, or they don't have a down payment, right? Like, you know, you can have a decent income, but if you're just paying a really high rent, how do you save up a down payment to get into your first place that you can lever into your second place, and then and so on? Just people in British Columbia. And so with our Attainable Housing Initiative through BC Build, those some of those initial homes that we're working on a partnership will be available for people with either a low or no down payment to this housing, and get onto that, get into the market and be able to lever that into ultimately getting to where they want to end up. The other piece is, you know, not everyone is able to get into a single family. You know, they need a townhome, or they need a condo, or they need a unit within a multiplex as their first step. And that kind of housing is really missing. And we need the ability for people to build more than one family lot across the province. This is something that's sensitive for people, I understand. People talk about the character of the neighborhood and these kinds of things. It's urgent. And so we'll be introducing legislation in the fall that requires to establish rules to allow people to build without having to do a full rezoning, more than one unit on a lot. This allows seniors to age in place. They can divide their place into two or into other units, have family members live with them, rent out units, build townhomes or smaller units that allow people to get into the market. And we think it's totally necessary to be able to get there. And also short-term rentals are a big challenge. And so we'll be introducing legislation in the fall as well. Tools that they need, the information, so that their rules around short-term rentals actually are respected. Because right now they have rules, but they don't know who's renting short-term. It's almost impossible for cities to enforce that without out front of someone's house to see people going in and out, and it doesn't make any sense. So to require the platforms to share information so that cities can manage this, we have to go at this from all kinds of different angles, and I think it's the issue of our time, really, you know, aside from climate change, obviously. But yeah, the ability of people to see a future for themselves in BC is critically important to me and to our government in Harwinder, and to you, obviously. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, we'll see you between February 2nd and 11th.
Back here. Excited.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Next is Marnie Melnick.
This is on? Okay. Mine's pretty minor compared to the issues that we've had around us. But I'm physio. Next year's will be my 50th anniversary since I graduated from UBC. I got last spring in our mail a healthcare update. It was the MLA update, and the brochure said they were supporting expansion of all these different professions, respiratory techs, LPNs, everybody, x-rays. Physios were not mentioned. When I graduated back in 1974, we had public pay physios, and we keep people out of the hospital. And now the profession has turned mostly private. People that are lower class can't afford that. And if you don't have coverage, it's expensive. I mean, I ran my own business in Manitoba. I know what that's like. I had a seniors rate, and it conflicted with a lot of people, but I did it anyway. The thing is, if we keep people out of the hospital for one night, you've paid my wages for the week. And we're not doing that anymore. When I lived in Nova Scotia, I was involved with a study. Research person hired us for an extra hour a week to phone the people from the geriatric rehab. Just phone them once a week and talk to them. Okay, Molly, how's number 7? You know, you can up it. We're let down from the people that weren't getting the telephone call. A huge amount, 50%. And the other thing I used to do in Manitoba, I used to do home care for the whole of Eastern Manitoba, right? Serves. And I'd follow people after their surgeries. I would do all of that stuff, and that's not covered anymore. When I moved to BC, we retired here from Winnipeg because of this mountain. I inquired about home care. Yeah, assessments are covered, but not treatment. So what's the good of that? And we've got these people who do this job in the hospitals and carry through and maybe even shorten their times in the hospital. Discharges will be quicker. How much does it cost to have somebody in the hospital for an extra day? So that's why was physiotherapists and occupational therapists not mentioned in that health update last spring?
Regarding update, I can tell. So update, it's a threefold page. So what's mentioned, it's not everything. So my staff and we try to fit whatever we could. So just basically highlight. The list goes on with our seats created. Maybe Minister Kang will tell you more as she was minister. When we create seats, including TRU, Okanagan College, and even UBC, we create for all sectors. Again, as probably you know our history, as the biggest proponents of public care, when we envisioned, and obviously when Tommy Douglas envisioned, it was head to toe. It was just different governments, different priorities, different way of doing things, and privatization and stuff were not there where we want to, but we have the biggest proponent and supporters who won't shy away from making it wholesome and more impactful for people. When you talk about rates, yes, it's 85 to 95 per hour, because I had to call to inquire for my mom and how many treatments she needed. So she just had her both hips replaced, and she had a physio from hospital that was covered. So I really appreciate your question, but I'll let Premier and Minister if she wants to add some. Yeah. Okay. So update doesn't include everything. I struggle. We do so much, and then every Friday I do updates on my social media. What did I do? What did government do? Those have wholesome links, and the update is just to touch base. So sorry if that word wasn't mentioned. Near and dear to me. Thanks.
Well, it's because I sent you that long email in June and I didn't hear back. That's why I'm sitting on this chair.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Marnie, I just want to touch on one piece, story, and then one piece of your question. So occupational therapists, physiotherapists were a huge issue around the ICBC reforms, because there's a big focus on treatment, supporting people with treatment from collisions under the new model. And one of the things the physiotherapist came and told me was exactly, well, maybe not exactly what he said, but close, that we need to dramatically increase the spaces in post-secondary for physios able to meet the demand from ICBC alone, let alone in the public healthcare system, because the number's been flat. So we have increased the seats. We'll find out for you how many around that reform. But your larger question, I think, is a critical one for our healthcare system, is like, how do we reactive care for people, that critical care, to preventive care, get people out of hospital into the level of care that they need. Yeah. And so part of that here is around the long-term care facility that's going to open in November, Creekside, to get people out of hospital into the level of care they need to free up those hospital beds for people. Part of it is around dementia prevention through exercise, and if you can help someone to stay in community a little bit longer and that disease, takes a huge burden off, especially with an aging population. It's our cancer strategy, which includes prevention aspects, lifestyle, and smoking cessation, diet, and exercise, and initiatives through the cancer and seniors wellness, exercise, which is around bone density and staying well. And then finally, home care. How do we support people to stay at home for as long as they can? Our Better at Home program that we do with the United Way. That and we have to expand it further. It's not optional because we simply can't build sufficient hospital space to be able to respond to the needs. And it's as you say, it's so much cheaper to support someone at home. And so that work, that point is not raised often enough. So thank you for bringing it up.
I'd just like to comment. I know your mom got help with her hip replacements at the hospital, but that's all is surgical patients at the hospital. Back in the 70s and 80s, somebody with a knee problem or a hip problem or or back problem could come to the public pay physio and have treatment. The other last, I won't take any more time, but the last is on personal care homes. When I was living in Manitoba, I serviced the personal care homes. It was covered by the government. Now, I must admit, private pay weren't as prominent then. And if you do physiotherapy and occupational therapy to the personal care homes, cover the private pay too, because my mom was in a private pay physiotherapy care home on Vancouver Island, and we could not get a physiotherapist. We had to pay somebody to come in. They should all be covered. And their exercise programs could be covered so that those people are out. I remember I started an exercise program in a northern home in Pine Falls, Manitoba. People just got out of their wheelchairs, made a circle, and their falls went down. It's so minor, and the effect is immense. So when you do, if you ever do, increase the role of physiotherapy in healthcare, cover the personal care homes, whether they're private pay or thank you. And I think
so
you're aware.
much. Great question. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Marnie.
Thank you. Next is Cheryl Bonoya. There you are. Hi.
I'm trying to figure out how to talk Marnie out of retirement.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Yes.
You match
thank you.
Harwinder so nicely. You guys are
Yes.
called ahead.
Go back. Like we work together at the hospital and
Really?
with the union.
Aw, it's reunion time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I see you, nurse.
I
But
see you, nurse. Huh? Round of applause for our nurses.
so my question is about. So I'm wearing steward because I think that's mine too. I'll
Whatever
start
you
with
want.
this. Yeah. Anyway, this question is about healthcare. Nurses, as we know, or I don't know if you do. I know you do, but to the group, we're in constant moral distress from shortage and all that. This question actually came up. The childcare that's being provided and built in infrastructures that are being built for this college, the community. How about we got young nurses who works long hours, different schedules, like from everyone, but we don't. They don't, because my kids are older now. We are struggling, or they are struggling, to find childcare from like 5 in the morning, 3 in the morning, whatever, because they're shift work. We are to build mental health building for Vernon Jubilee Hospital. Can we incorporate a childcare building for our nurses?
Great question. Joe, you don't have to leave. So this is such a great question. First of all, thank you for doing the work. I know it's been stressful and the pandemic was brutal, and the shortage of nurses must be every day work. I just want to express my appreciation. And, it's more than words for the government. We recently signed an agreement with the nurses that recognizes the hard work and the fact that, when I started dating my wife, she was a nurse. And so she was a nurse and I was a lawyer politician. So you can imagine, in terms of popular response to our professions, right? People love nurses because nurses are the ones who have the contact at the bedside. They're the ones who they see all the time, looking after their wounds. looking after their pain, making sure they're, and it's important that we recognize that. So in our agreement with the nurses, there's a couple components. One is they're getting paid a wage that is appropriate for the healthcare professionals that they are. The second is to nurses about hitting certain levels of staff to patient ratios. It sounds like a technical thing, but when you're a nurse, when I hear Cheryl talk about the moral distress, the distress comes from having a whole bunch of patients that, as I understand it, way better. But as I understand it, the distress comes from having a whole bunch of patients that need care, and you're just one person, and you have to look after all of these people. And that's where we lose nurses to burnout, to PTSD, just from being in our healthcare system. And so our commitment to nurses is we are going to be the first jurisdiction in Canada to guarantee you a ratio of patients to nurses. And if we don't hit those ratios, more money, because we recognize the job gets that much harder, and it's a financial incentive for government to make sure we're hitting those standards. And the way we're going to hit those standards is a couple different ways. One is internationally trained nurses and nationally trained nurses. I believe that we are the best jurisdiction in Canada for nurses to work in right now in terms of compensation, in terms of being the only place with this nursing ratio, which is a big deal for nurses. And come from other provinces to British Columbia. For internationally trained nurses, we'll give them a bursary to get any courses that they need to be able to start working. We'll cover the cost of their assessment. They used to have to pay to be assessed now. We've given the College of Nurses money to hire more people to do the assessments, to do the training. And for BC nurses who maybe left the profession because they were stressed out or they were sick of it, they didn't want to do it anymore, they're thinking maybe we'll pay for their transportation to be assessed, we'll pay for all their courses as well, and we also have bursaries for them. We're trying to get every single available nurse off the sidelines and into our healthcare system so that Cheryl's in terms of logistics like childcare, there's also housing. So we're working with health authorities on health authority-owned land on a couple pilot projects to build housing for healthcare workers, either on or near healthcare facilities, so that they're able to come and work for us. We can provide housing, we can provide childcare, we can provide your assessment, we can get you to work right away as a recruitment tool. And in addition, absolutely, in all of the public buildings that we're building, it could be health, it could be education, or so on. We always look at a couple things. One is, can we use mass timber, wood products to develop the economy? Can we, what are the carbon footprint of the building? How do we address climate change? But also childcare facility. Can we create childcare in this as well, including in long-term care sites and in seniors facilities and others? So absolutely, yes. I know that's so important. 24-hour childcare remains for us, because of the childcare workers that we need, in terms of that 5 a.m. or that you're working a night shift or whatever. And so we'll keep working on that. But we absolutely, Cheryl, thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
I'll come back for the other question.
Thank you. And I'll take your next question as well with me. So yeah. And I just want to add to what nurse-patient ratios, the person, Cheryl, and we worked with BC Nurses Union, advocated to get that for 2 decades. And there is a message from Canadian Federation President Linda Silas, and I sent that video to Minister Dix because she's nonpartisan, but she said, I got a call from California nurses saying, thank you, Linda, for setting the bar so high in the province, and we're the only province to do that. It's a bold move. Previously, we were told government, no, it's a dream, it's not going to happen, and they laughed at us. And we have set aside $750 million to make that happen, which money will be used with BC Nurses Union, and money will be how do we utilize with the nurses. Training, retraining, retention is the key as well, exploring all the options. And childcare spaces, Minister Dix and Premier and I, we announced the Richmond long-term care facility Kelly's writing. Those facilities are also coming with childcare. So we have this vision different because we have lived experiences, and it matters and it makes a difference. So in order to get the nurse-patient ratios, and if you remember, Our government added mental health days, which we didn't have. We had sick days, and now nurses can call and their salary will be covered there. You know, it's a lot of stress. It's really important that we take care, because retention in our health human is the key. Yes, we can train all, we can hire, we can go hire from foreign, but what about retention? What about, we don't want that 20, 30 years, that experience, which is unmatchable. We don't want them to leave. So how do we treat them with the dignity and deserve? So you have two nurses advocating on the government side, first time in many, many years, Susie Chant and myself, and of course, again, supportive government and supportive colleagues. So yes, thank you so much. So do we have room for more questions, or I get the signal that we need to wrap up? So I just want to say thank you so much. There were so many questions. We wish we looked at questions, and Eileen and we were saying we would spend 7-8 hours if we were to take all, but that doesn't mean if your question you didn't get to ask it, that isn't, we're going to save them, we're going to keep them, and those questions will be addressed, and we'll look at and that we hear from you. It's the goal that being amongst many of you since my election for 3 years, I've been among community between people with my pop-up offices, these kind of outreach. My goal is to you tell us, we're doing your intention to make lives better for all of you, but how can we do it in an effective way so you can, as Premier said, you can feel, touch, and see it. So this is the goal. So thank you for your contribution and engagement today. Premier share a few words, and then Minister Kang, and thank you both for being here. And thanks to the staff for support.
Thanks for coming. If you put contact information on your, just 1 second, then we'll come to you. Information on your sheet, we're going to get an answer to you. Just to be clear, Harwinder is committed to providing answers to you, as am I. Sorry, I asked you to just take a second. Yes, please. Okay, just very quickly, yes. Okay, thanks. Great question. We got to support our farmers. You know, we got to have food security in British Columbia, and there are a number of different ways that we do that. That we partner with the federal government on. There are a number of different food security programs that you talked about. We also we're also using funding to support farmers that can add value to crops through processing on their sites. And also, we're looking at making sure that the ALR responds to all parts of food security, which includes food processing, and that farmers are able to process. Because we know when we're shipping chickens to Alberta, when we're shipping products to Washington State to be processed, if the border closes or the highways get washed out or whatever, that our food security is threatened. We've seen that a couple times, so we're doing that work. Agriculture Minister's mandate letter. For your home, there are a number of different exceptions and areas in the ALC where you can have additional living space, including for workers on your site and so on. The team can help you work through that, but the ALR is part of how we protect farmers by protecting that farmland, keeping the costs lower than other types of land, so that farmers can actually afford to farm as well. I know it drives people crazy, but it doesn't have to be as challenging as it sometimes is, but it is a key part of our food security strategy as well. So we'll follow up with you after that. And anything to wrap up? Thank you for asking your question.
Harwinder, thank you so much for inviting the Premier and myself to come into your community. So did you know that in BC, there are 88 different local governments, and we have the mayor of Vernon here. I just want to say how wonderful it is to be able to be working with all orders of government. And this is what Premier and our BC NDP government, it is really working together with everyone, whether it's the federal government, with our provincial government, local government, and as well the nonprofit organizations, because we do want to recognize it was the nonprofit organizations that supported the communities on the ground. So if you're a nonprofit organization staff or representative, can you please stand, and we'll give you a round of applause. Please recognize these wonderful people. Wow. Thank you so much for being the ears, eyes, and ears on the ground. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much once again. It's been a pleasure. We'll have more opportunities like this with different ministers and government.